A terrifying zombie virus is spreading in Florida. The rapid infection quickly engulfs the entire United States. The infected become bloodthirsty and violent. To control the spread of the virus, the government purchases a large number of drones for patrol. Anyone caught leaving their home without permission is immediately executed by the drones. However, with no supply deliveries during the quarantine, people are forced to take risks to find food. A young couple frantically runs toward the mountains, the drone's buzzing echoes behind them. Soon, the woman can no longer run and collapses to the ground, coughing up large amounts of blood. It seems she has already been infected with the zombie virus. The man tries to pull his girlfriend along, urging her to keep running, but she pushes him away, telling him to go on without her. Realizing her intention, he hesitates briefly before deciding to flee alone. But before he can take more than 2 steps, an arrow pierces the woman's body, killing her instantly. Just as he is about to turn around, in another part of the mountains, David is in isolation inside a wooden cabin. He has been quarantined for over 6 months since he was declared an asymptomatic carrier. During this time, he must regularly draw blood for research. To maintain his blood in good condition, David sets multiple alarms. He strictly follows a routine, eating meals and exercising on time. Before bed, he checks his eyes for any abnormalities. At precisely 11 p.m., he must draw a small amount of blood. The next day, under drone surveillance, he places the blood sample at a designated location. As a reward, David does not need to scavenge for supplies. The drones periodically deliver food to him. Day after day, David mechanically follows this routine. The only thing keeping him going is his daily video calls with his girlfriend, Samantha. Samantha is a healthcare worker who constantly encourages David to hold on. She assures him that once antibodies are extracted from his blood, the viral disaster will end and they will finally reunite. After finishing a video call with Samantha, David takes out a phone book. He has been trying to contact the outside world to gather information. Since being isolated in the mountains, he has been completely cut off. He has no idea whether the outside world is safe and can only randomly dial numbers, hoping for someone to answer, but no one ever picks up. However, on this particular day, just as David is checking his body like usual, the phone suddenly rings. David rushes to answer it. On the other end is a stranger named Todd. Todd tells David that the outside world is in chaos. Cities have lost their former prosperity. Food shortages have led to violent conflicts among survivors. Todd has not eaten in days and wants to seek refuge with David, but David refuses. He tells Todd that he is an asymptomatic carrier in isolation and that no one is allowed near him. To his surprise, Todd asks if David has ever tested himself. He claims he has never heard of asymptomatic carriers and suggests that David might not be infected at all. Hearing this, David is stunned. For the first time, he begins to doubt himself. The next day, while picking up his food supply, David secretly avoids the drones. He sneaks into a residential house and finds a test kit. Following the instructions, he places a drop of his blood into the test tube. At that moment, he hears noises outside. David immediately tenses up. The sky is already darkening, and Samantha had warned him never to go out at night. Not wanting to stay any longer, David grabs the test tube and heads back. But on the way, an unexpected event occurs. As he passes by a lake, a zombie suddenly appears behind him.
Step back.
The zombie grinds its teeth and lunges at David with ferocity. Panicked, David tries to flee, but in his haste, he slips and falls into the water with a splash. Just as the zombie is about to feast on him, an arrow shoots out, taking the zombie down. David turns to see a figure in a hazmat suit. The person reloads the crossbow and fires another shot, finishing off the zombie. Terrified, David does not approach the yellow-suited figure. Instead, he grabs his things and sprints home. Back in his cabin, David remains on edge, fearing that the mysterious figure might come after him. He spends a restless night filled with unease, but the next day, everything seems to return to normal. The drones continue their surveillance, Samantha still calls him daily, and he keeps following his alarm reminders to exercise. That evening, as he prepares to draw blood again, David remembers the test tube in his backpack. He takes it out and finds that the liquid inside has turned blue, indicating that he is not infected. David stares at the result, lost in thought. Then, as if awakening from a trance, he furiously takes an axe and smashes all his alarms. He realizes it was all a lie. He was never infected. But why was he kept in isolation? Why was his blood being taken every day? That night, David shares everything with Samantha, including what happened the day before. He demands to know the truth. Samantha refuses, citing military confidentiality, but she assures him that a vaccine will soon be developed. Once that happens, they will reunite. Looking at his girlfriend, David's suspicion deepens. He pretends to agree to continue providing blood, but the next day, he takes action. David secretly grabs an axe and leaves his cabin. He knows the drones regularly deliver supplies. If he follows them carefully, he can locate their operators. Patiently, he trails a drone. After passing through a forest, David spots 2 tents ahead. Cautiously, he approaches, virus. A foul stench wafts from one of the tents. Lifting the fabric covering the entrance, he is met with a corpse. An arrow is still lodged in the mask on its face. Before he can recover from the shock, the hum of a drone sounds above. David quickly hides behind a rock. The yellow-suited figure appears once more. Holding a crossbow, the figure scans the area before heading into the tent. David stealthily follows. Inside, he discovers a woman injecting herself with blood. That woman is Samantha. She seems highly sensitive to sunlight. The two of them return inside. David demands to know why she lied to him. Samantha finally confesses. She did it to protect him. The truth is, there is no cure for the virus. The government has ordered all infected individuals to be executed. The chaos has also led to many uninfected people being killed. To save David, Samantha falsely reported him as infected. She claimed he was crucial to vaccine development, thus sparing him from government extermination. However, to maintain the deception, he had to be constantly monitored by drones. David almost believes her. He is touched by how much she sacrificed for him. But then, as she speaks, Samantha's eyes remain fixated on his injured arm. David also realized that something was wrong. He discreetly pricked his girlfriend's hand with a blood collection needle, then quickly locked her inside the room. After dropping a sample of her blood into the test tube, the reagent reacted almost immediately. The red color indicated that Samantha was already infected. To confirm his suspicion, David searched through Samantha's tent. On her computer, he found stored video recordings. It turned out that Samantha had been infected long ago. Through her research, she discovered that human blood could suppress the virus, but the side effect was an extreme fear of sunlight. Seeing this, David finally understood everything. The regular blood draws weren't for testing. They were for Samantha's consumption. No wonder she insisted he exercise every day. It was to keep his blood bank healthy. The files on the computer revealed that Samantha had made a deal with the government, but none of it concerned David. The government simply wanted to study how long drinking human blood could suppress the virus. At that moment, David suddenly realized he had not provided Samantha with blood today. He hurriedly checked his room's surveillance camera. As expected, Samantha was already beginning to transform.
Okay.
David rushed back home, knowing the danger but unable to suppress his love for her. By the time he arrived, the door had been smashed open, and Samantha was nowhere to be found. He frantically searched, unaware that she was already behind him. A sudden alarm clock ringing saved David's life. For a brief moment, Samantha regained some clarity, but her bloodthirsty nature quickly took over again. She lunged at David, terrified. David ran upstairs and threw open the curtains. Exposed to the sunlight, Samantha shrank into a dark corner. Seeing his beloved transformed into a zombie, David felt immense pain. He considered giving her a blood transfusion, hoping to bring her back to normal. In truth, David had already made up his mind on the way back. As long as he continued exercising and drawing blood daily, Samantha wouldn't turn into a zombie. They could still live together. Just as David picked up a syringe to draw blood, the sun was suddenly covered by dark clouds. In an instant, Samantha pounced on David, pinning him to the ground, her mouth clicking hungrily. Looking at his suffering girlfriend, the love-struck David chose not to resist. He stopped struggling and allowed Samantha to sink her teeth into his shoulder. As she drank his blood, Samantha's consciousness gradually returned. Realizing what she had done to David, her face filled with sorrow and guilt. Samantha no longer wanted to live as a half-human, half-zombie creature. While David was distracted, she stepped into the sunlight alone. The moment the sun touched her skin, her body ignited in flames. David crawled toward her burning body, holding her tightly, refusing to let go. At that moment, a swarm of drones appeared in the sky. Shortly after, David's body also began to change. He realized that he had been infected. Not wanting to become a creature that feared the sunlight, he decided to dig a grave and bury himself alive. Lying in the pit, waiting for death, he suddenly felt the sun's scorching rays on his skin. The burning sensation made him hesitate. His survival instinct ultimately won, but the story didn't end there. Sometime later, Todd, who had received David's message, arrived at the cabin. Seeing the stockpile of food, he was grateful for David's help. An alarm suddenly rang. Todd sat down at the computer. On the screen was David. However, he now called himself Dr. Chambers. His identity had changed. He was now a medical researcher. David, or rather Dr. Chambers, told Todd that he had found a cure. To develop a true vaccine against the zombie virus, he needed Todd's blood as an asymptomatic carrier.
We can start working on a treatment for you right away. In the shelves to your left, you'll find phlebotomy equipment, tools to collect samples of your blood. You're safe now. Let's get started.